Here we are. All right. So welcome everyone. We are super excited to have so many people here with us today. This is fantastic. Um, you're going to notice a theme pretty quickly here, and I'll wait and see if you all pick up on it. But I'll start with an introduction. And I'm Coach Terri Lance, and my background is as a psychologist. And I came to TFM and worked with Megan Ramos as my coach and drastically changed my health journey, drastically changed my weight journey. And then at some point, I got to become a coach. So I was very excited to join the TFM team. And then the next part is history. Lisa, you want to go?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Chance, and I have been doing this way of life since about halfway into 2018. And so I've been doing this a while, and I've certainly had ups and downs through this. My history is as an ICU nurse, cardiac surgery, and was last. I spent most of my time in coronary intensive care. And I started with Terri, and I never thought she'd get through to me when I was on Shuker. I don't know how I made so much progress. And I kept trying to give up sugar, and I finally did. Thank you, Terri. But yes, I was a community mentor first, and then, I was doing the Q&As with Dr. Fung, helping out in the community. And then Megan asked me to be a coach, and it was during COVID. And I'm like, well, what else have I got to do, even though I was already retired? And she got me back in, and I can honestly tell you I love my job. So just like, it's perfect for me. So thank you, Megan. Thank you, Terri.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Heather, you want to?
Yes, I do. So I am Heather Shuker. I too am a coach with the fasting method. And Terry was my coach as well. So my story is I, like many probably in in this webinar right now, read Dr. Fung's book, right? I think I saw him on a podcast or heard him on a podcast. I heard him on Two Keto Dudes back in the day. That was the first time I had heard of him, and then went down the rabbit hole with the obesity code and diabetes code, reading his books. And then that, for the most part, when I heard about that, it reinforced what I believed to be true about low carb, right? The fasting piece was kind of that weird stuff at the end. Oh, what is this? What is that nonsense? I don't do that, right? But low carb, I'm, all in insulin resistance. I get it. Thank you for all the things about that. And then, I was, trying to do low carb like I had done in my 20s and lost a bunch of weight doing it again in my 40s. And I was like, wow, this isn't working. I'm not eating the carbs. Why is nothing working? And then I kind of went back through the obesity code and back through, and I was like, oh, what's this fasting thing? And then Life in the Fasting Lane came out, and I read that book in 2020, and that was actually the book that was like lit that switch about maybe I could fast, right? I think Eve Mayer said hunger is a liar in that book, and I was like, what? Whoa, hey, right? It's like, it's this bully that you kind of convinces us. And I'm like, you know what? Now she mentions it. I am, covered in body fat. Why am I hungry? What is this about? Why am I even having that experience? And so that was like, oh, wow. And then, they talk about hunger coming in waves and being something that doesn't just get bigger and bigger until you explode. And I was like, can that possibly be true? And it turns out, yes, in fact, it can possibly be true. So I started down the path of fasting. I did one overnight fast in August of 2020, and that was it. And then I did a whole bunch of OMAD fasting on my own. I was like, I'm just going to eat one meal a day, every single day. And at first it was amazing. I was losing weight hand over fist. It was like, oh my God, it's a magic eraser. I can, lose all this weight. And then it just stopped. And then the weight started coming back. And I was like, how can I possibly be not losing weight? I'm eating one meal a day. How is it still so stuck? And at that time, I was studying for my doctorate. I was getting, studying obesity. And in my studies, I learned that intensive lifestyle intervention was the way to help people through this. And so I was like, that's what I need. I need intervention. I need somebody to help me through this. I need a coach. And so I came to the fasting method thinking, you know what, I'm doing this on my own for 2 years now, right? So that was 2020. Now it was up to April of 2022. Yes, I am about to get to my 3-year anniversary. And I was like, I need a coach. That's it. I need somebody to help me through this. And I came and I started listening to podcasts. I heard Terri. I was like, that's who I need, that she can help me. And it's not like day one that I signed up. Terri was just ready. Heather, let's go. I will fix you, right? There's a process, where you sign up for an intake and you have, you got to wait for that to come and all that. And so in the meantime, I was like, well, I guess I'll see what's going on in the community. I don't need a community though. That's not what I need. Turns out, like pretty much instantly after joining the community, I started learning what I was doing wrong. I started seeing why the string of OMADs wasn't working. I started to see, kind of where the problems were coming up for me. So even before I started working with Terri, I started in on what eventually became my protocol, which was 342s. And then I got her as a coach. And I was able to get to goal in 6 months, which they say can be possible. But I heard Megan Roma say, if you treat this like therapy, if you show up for yourself consistently for 6 months, you can get to goal. I was like, she's crazy. That can't possibly be true. And then I proved it right. So that whole experience was all that I needed to convince me after a lifetime of struggling with my weight that the answer was to be found in community and coaching. So after, I met my goal, I was like, I stayed as a member of the community and I was like, gosh, I feel really called to help people in the way that Terri helped me and the way the community helped me. I really wanted to pay it forward and give back and do for others, what had been a lifelong struggle for me. So, I started kind of going out on social media and being like, fasting's amazing. And Terry's like, hey, it seems like you're coaching. How about you come coach with us? And so that's long story long. That's how I became a coach with the fasting method after successfully going through the program, and realizing for the first time in my life that this is a solvable problem. The obesity is not something that I had to carry with me forever. And I could not only help myself, but help others. That's how I got here. Thank you, Terri.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to just do a quick call out. This is probably the largest crowd we've had in one of these. And I know we've just started these recently, but we used to do them years ago. And I think, Lisa, you can attest to this is the largest crowd we've seen. So we're excited about that. And I love that you all have been posting where you're from. We have someone here today from Algeria. We have people from the UK. I know based on timing, some people are going to have to watch this because they're, it's 2 a.m. where they are or something, but so excited to see all of you here. Shout out Columbus, Ohio. I spent 18 years of my life there. Very excited to see all of you. Obviously, Lisa and Heather and I could talk your ears off for days. Like, we love to talk about this stuff. So we want to share some things with you. And one of the things we thought maybe from our last one that maybe it would be helpful for people. Oh, someone from Morocco. Holy cow. We wanted to make sure that you get to understand that we also have gone through this process. We are not up in an ivory tower saying, hey, go do this. We have lived this and continue to live it. It's a lifestyle. It's a long-term decision. And so we wanted to talk today about our journeys, but also about some of the challenges we faced in our journey and how we can help support you in your journey. And then we also are we're going to open it up for some questions later. We're going to talk first, and then we're going to open up to questions. The questions need to go in the Q&A, and we may not be able to get through all of them. But if you have a question you've been dying to ask us, you're going to go ahead and type that into that Q&A box. We won't be able to see every question that comes up in the chat. Lots of messages coming up in the chat. Okay. So Heather, I love that you kind of really walked through the journey. And one of the things you highlighted is that, my guess is, you didn't say it quite like this, but you're very competent, you're very independent, and you thought, I'll do this on my own. And what you then came to really highlight is that getting part of a community really made a difference for you. I can say that that really changed my journey because, like many of us, I had lost weight, gained weight, improved my health, gotten sick again, lots of things. And at that time, TFM really didn't exist as TFM. It was IDM, intensive dietary management, and it was only coaching. There was no community. There were no community meetings. We didn't have things like this. And so Megan was, the one thing I could latch onto. But I know that so many people that are now part of our community, it is what Heather said. It's the community that makes the difference. You do not have to go this alone. So I hope that you hear that in what we share today. I wanted to share one of the challenges for me, and I think most people experience this at some level in this journey, is I had a hard time at first figuring out how much to talk about it or not talk about it. And I know by saying this, Heather, we've done a podcast on this. You have some insights on this, but I felt like I already was struggling and I wanted to accomplish my goals, and I didn't know how much to share with other people what I was doing. And at the time, fasting was not in any news program, it was not in any magazine. No one was talking about fasting. And I realized when I said I was fasting, people looked at me like I had four heads. Clearly, I was stupid. Clearly, I had lost it. And they really struggled accepting this. So I was an early adopter, I would say, of this, and I struggled with how much to share. I think we've come a long way. I think fasting is so much more commonly understood to some level. You still might get the look like you have four heads, but I do think that being open about what you're doing so that you don't feel like you're doing this in secret is really helpful. We joke, other people joke, the first rule about fasting is don't talk about fasting. And Heather says, shout it out from the mountaintops, right? But I want to encourage, as you get going in this journey or as you struggle in this journey, talk to other people about it. Get support, even if they don't quite understand. I don't understand why someone wants to run a marathon, but I can support them in doing that, right? So for me, that was one of the early challenges is I got to talk to Megan once in a while, but I felt very isolated. And I felt like I was doing something no one else was doing. So getting involved in a community, getting a coach, getting accountability buddies, talking to your, support network, I think is key.
Yeah, on that note, Terry, I think that we are such pack animals, right? We want to feel like we're part of a tribe. We want to feel like we're part of a community. And when we start eating differently or not eating at all, we can feel very different and very kind of abnormal, right? When everyone around you is eating constantly and eating, junk that you're trying to avoid, you start to feel like the odd man out, and it's easier to go along to get along. And it's just like, oh, just eat, just eat whatever, fit in, don't stand out. And, we're taught that from childhood, but that's like built in because, back in the day, if you kind of were too far outside of the norm of the pack, they would leave you behind, right? They're going to leave you in the ditch and move along, and there you are left to die. And so there is this kind of, survival instinct when it comes to, being part of a community to feel safe. And so sometimes when we're trying to do this out in the world by ourselves, we feel very unsafe. And like you said, with everybody judging and having strong opinions on how you eat, they didn't care when you were rolling through the fast food restaurant. They didn't care when you had a house full of junk. But here, now that you're trying to eat, proteins and vegetables and pause from eating so that you can compel your body to tap into body fat for fuel, then, what are you doing? That's unsafe, right? Okay. And so, that experience of constantly feeling unsafe and outside of the norm can make it even harder to stick with. And it's already hard enough to stick with, right? It's already hard enough to maintain the habits necessary to lose a significant amount of weight. And so part of what I learned, right, as mentioned earlier, is that when you have support, when you join the tribe, when you have a coach, when you are doing things in community, that safety piece is calmed. You now feel like, oh, it's not just me out here by myself on the savannah. I have this whole tribe. I have this whole group of people that is doing this too. It's not weird. It's what we do here, right? Those of us that are part of the fasting method community know, okay, this is, we have our little phrases of like, what would Terry do, right? The dose makes the poison. We have this whole language that we use, and we just feel comforted that we're not alone. We're not by ourselves. We're not going to get left behind. In fact, we're going to be lifted up to get through this journey together.
And it's nice to be around people who light your path instead of darken it. And that seems to be the biggest struggle. A lot of, not the biggest, I would say grief is usually what pulls some of my clients down. But one of the issues is that, well, they don't feel supported by their friends and loved ones. And because the other people they work with don't get it because they hear the word fasting and they freak. Now, that's not quite the problem it is in California as it is in the rest of the world. I tell people I'm fasting and they don't care. So.
You just highlighted something else, Lisa, that I think for many of us is a challenge in this journey. I'm going to hop topics a little bit here. You mentioned grief, and obviously, emotional eating, grieving, all kinds of things in our lives often lead many of us to problematic eating behaviors. But something that we talk a lot about in our community meetings, and I hear a lot of clients process this, is grieving an old lifestyle, grieving ways of engaging with food that they've been doing for 40, 50, 60 years, grieving certain ways that they used to celebrate things with food that harmed them. And I know it sounds kind of corny to some people, think like, come on, you're grieving food. But I know for a fact that has been part of my journey. I had to learn that everything I ate did not have to be carried in a vehicle of bread. That was hard. And again, it may sound a little weird, like, oh my gosh, come on, Terri, it's just bread. But bread was life to me. Bread was in every meal. Bread was, between every meal. It was constant. And so for many of us, part of this journey does mean allowing ourselves to grieve some of our old patterns. But it's kind of like grieving a relationship that wasn't healthy. Of course you're going to grieve. You cared about this person, you love this person, you had great memories with this person, but it was no longer serving you to be in that relationship, and you've had to grieve it. I think many of us go through that as we change our relationship with food, even as we change our relationships with our bodies. So that's one of the challenges that I know I have gone through, and I think is pretty typical for most people along the way.
One of the things you really helped me with, Terri, and what you started me with was compassionate curiosity, which involves no judgment. And that's the hard part. The no judgment is the hard part. And I just am, I know I recently saw a neurologist that was talking about grief and the brain. And he said, he described it as, those little dendrites are trying to connect, right? And when something's out of your life, that is still trying to connect there to that pathway. And so then it grieves because those dendrites start dying. And so it's like, wait a minute, but it was one of the community mentors who helped me, Patrice. She said, Lisa, you're allowed to grieve for the food that you can no longer have. And I said, I am? Because to me, it felt shameful. Why are you missing that substance? And it's like, wow, that just sort of freed me up. It's like, yes, I can grieve that and realize I'm not walking down that path anymore.
Absolutely.
I think a corollary to that kind of grieving when we give up those foods and missing them when they're gone is also this unfortunate thing that many of us do, which is having shame and guilt when we do have them, right? When we are imperfect, right? In changing our way of eating and completely eliminating all of the foods that we know don't serve us, that we know, are more about comfort than are about nutrition. And I think that a lot of times, that self-talk, the way that we, kind of refer to ourselves when we go off track, I was bad, right? I was eating bad foods, and this whole shame that we have associated with foods as if, we're a good person or a bad person based on what we're eating, right? We are animals on this planet that need to eat, right? Is required for even though we're fasting coaches, I assure you, we are still required to eat. And it is not a matter of, good food or bad food. It is a matter of, are we eating foods that are congruent with us reaching our goals, food that make us feel well and healthy or not? And that, making that choice and not always making the choice that we would prefer to make is a lot different than being a good or a bad person. And I bring that up because it is, I think, so important to let go of a lot of that negative self-talk that comes with this process, that those of us who have been haranguing ourselves with for decades, that have, struggled with obesity, especially those of us of a certain age who you got teased mercilessly because of our bodies. Fortunately, that is a little less the case for the youth of today, but it is definitely not what I grew up with. And so we have this shame that we carry, and I think it gets in our way. I know it definitely got in my way when I was looking at myself in the mirror every day, being disgusted, right? And, my coach told me, you can't heal a body that you hate. And I think that piece is necessary, that acceptance that, okay, I was eating a whole lot of foods that didn't serve me. I'm choosing to eat differently now. That doesn't make past me good or bad. That doesn't make present me good or bad. That makes me more informed. And it is a practice. It is something that I'm going to keep trying to do on a regular basis. And I will not always be perfect or successful. Like, I will continue to try. And that's all we can ask of ourselves. And I think the more that we love ourselves, the more that we respect what our body can do and are grateful for it, the more likely we're going to choose foods that serve it.
And our
Absolutely.
body is designed to heal. And most of us don't know how good our body is supposed to feel. We just accept it as old age, as progress. No, we're designed to heal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to do maybe one more round of anything that the three of us, feel compelled that we have to get out here, as far as um, our own journey and some of the challenges we have faced, the challenges that clients and community members talk about. I want us to talk a little bit about what TFM can do to help us in this journey. And then I want to get to some of these questions. There are some great questions in there. I wanted to share one more challenge for me, and that was monotony. I'm probably one of those people who has a bit of ADD, and I like things to be different all the time. I have a hard time finishing projects. I have started 40,000 craft projects that are now sitting in a bag in a basement somewhere, never gifted to anyone because I never finished them. So doing something on repeat for me was a bit challenging at first. And what I always want people to know is there's this thing we talk about consistency, doing something with consistent effort. Sometimes people will come and say, "Hey, I fasted twice in the last month. How come I haven't lost 20 pounds?" You've got to be fasting consistently. You've got to be eating well consistently. But I also found okay, Megan said 3 fasts a week. Boom, boom, boom. I struggled some with the monotony. And so I had to work on the mindset around that. For me, had to put some, what would I say, parameters around, I'm going to do this for 6 weeks, because then it didn't feel quite so monotonous. But then at the end of 6 weeks, I was going to make a new plan of what comes next. So to my mind, that felt a little new, even though I was still fasting and even though I was still eating properly for my body, it felt a little different. So again, a challenge for me was what felt like could be monotony, doing the same thing all of the time. I had to switch it up a little bit to get my mind to keep engaging it. Heather, do you have any other challenges that you went through or that other people you wanted to share have gone through?
Yeah, well, I was kind of reflecting on the monotony piece, which is kind of funny that a big piece of that I think is separating food as a whole lot of things that food isn't, right? And is one of the biggest ones being food is entertainment. And I think that, when we are so used to food being what we're looking forward to, what are we going to have for lunch? What are we going to have for dinner? And you're just looking forward to the lights and the sparks and the shiny that comes from food. When we start to eat, kind of low carb, whole food meals, they're nutritious and they're satisfying and all of those things, but they aren't much of a party, right? They're not much of a carnival for the most part, right? In fact, I actually consider, food that feels very tempting to overeat is like what's in there that I shouldn't have, right? If I want to keep eating past satiety, I know that there is something in there that is leading me astray. It is lighting up my bells and whistles in a way that I don't appreciate anymore because I feel that lack of control. And so a lot of times when clients come to me with, this desire for food freedom, right? This ability to kind of let go of the noise and the constant pull of eating and, cravings and all of those things. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier and letting, kind of releasing yourself from those foods is, just accepting like a meal does not have to be an exciting carnival, right? It can just be a meal. It can just be nutrition. And when, part of, I think what is necessary on this journey is to start to separate like, okay, every vacation isn't about what I'm going to eat. Every holiday isn't about what I'm going to eat. Every, weekend with my friends isn't about what I'm going to eat, right? It is about all of the other things, all of the other joys in life that if we turn down that food noise and kind of put that, aside for a little bit and focus on the people and the rituals and the scenery and all of the other things that make life wonderful, then we can start to kind of let go of that hold that food has on us to be our entertainment, to be our comfort, to be what we constantly go to when we have the slightest discomfort, right? Like, kind of using our skills to get to another way of being that isn't food. And that is when I will put in my mandatory plug for Coach Jamie. We have a meditation instructor in the fasting method. And I like to point that out because, the fasting method was founded by two scientists, right? Dr. Fung and Megan Ramos, and they had a meditation instructor come in and work with us. Why is that? Well, because we know that a big piece of why many of us struggle with our consistency, with our weight, with et cetera, is because of stress, right? Stress management is weight management is something that I like to say. And that's because when we have these stressful events happen to us and it settles down into our body, we don't know what else to reach for. We know if we reach for food, we're going to feel better for a few minutes, but we don't have any other tools in our tool belt, and we need to develop those. So that's why we have a meditation instructor that's teaching us tools that we can reach for instead. Coach Lisa has come up with a list of 39 ways to lower cortisol because there are other things that we can do to change our state of being besides eating. And that's part of this practice. It's not just about, fasting. It's not just about cutting the carbs. It is also learning to manage our stress in such a way that it is not a constant source of derailment.
And Terri has a couple of podcasts on time restricted eating, part 1 and part 2. I don't remember the numbers, but one of my favorite lines of hers is time restricted eating, no snacking, is healing your relationship with food. And so many people come to me and say, I put them on TRE, no snacking, and they're like, Lisa, do you know that it's harder to do that than it is to fast? Yes, I know that from personal experience, that it's harder to do that. You have to bring the tiger out of the cage and you have to rebuild and nourish your body. And so many of us are not good at that. We use food for so many other things, like what, some of what you mentioned. And I was recently listening to Terry's podcast with David, the last podcast, and he talked about plating. And now I have a couple of things that I struggle with, but plating was huge. I struggled with plating from the very beginning. I think it was from being a nurse. You gobble your food down. Because I tried to pinpoint it. I said, we didn't do this when I was growing up. Where did this come from? Oh, I was always eating on the run. And I just continued to do that even after I retired. And so for me, it was like agony to sit down and plate my food and not have any other distractions, thinking about food all day long, and then finally getting my meal and eating it in 3 minutes. What is that about? But when I slow my roll on that and am mindful and in the present moment with that meal, I get more satiation. So I started researching it. And yes, you absolutely metabolize your food better if you're mindful when you eat. You don't spike as high on your blood sugar and all these other things happen. I'm like, okay.
That's awesome. All right. You all have put so many good questions in. I'm going to ask a favor that you stop typing questions in because I know it's frustrating when your question doesn't get answered. The other thing I'm going to try to do is answer some questions kind of combined. Like, oh, there are like 3 questions that kind of touch on this. So I'm hoping that even if you don't hear your specific question, you can kind of extrapolate from some of what we're saying. So I would say one of the questions, themes that's coming up is there really a difference between if I have a lot of weight to lose or I have a little bit to lose? And I think also kind of touching on the idea of diet mentality. Like, what if I come in and do a free membership for a few weeks? What if I lose a few pounds, but what happens after those few weeks, right? Or what if I join for 1 month and I'm really successful? What do I do then? And the summary answer that I really want to provide is what we really focus on at TFM. Of course, we focus on fasting protocols and how to fast safely and when to tweak your fast and how eating affects it and what to eat and when to eat, those things, of course. But what I love the most about TFM is how much we focus on changing our lives, transforming how we think, how we talk to ourselves, how we navigate boundaries with other people, with ourselves. And someone asked this specifically, I don't think I can get that in 1 month. No, you can't. But we're going to expose you to enough of it that you can keep working on it. And, several people in the chat have commented that, looking for an option for support that doesn't have an expense connected with it. And obviously, the 3 of us are biased, so I just want to be upfront about that. But as I think one of our mentors mentioned, being unwell, having an unhealthy relationship with food, that costs a lot of money. And many people find they save money when they start eating better. They don't throw away as much food. They buy better food. They buy higher quality food. We just had someone in a town hall meeting talk about that yesterday. They don't eat as often. They skip meals. They're saving money. And so they decide that investment in themselves for a few months at TFM is worth transforming their lives. Keep listening to the podcast. Lots of free information there, lots of valuable information. But going back to the other part of the question is, does it matter whether I have a lot of weight to lose or a little weight to lose? No. We have people in our community and we work with people as clients I have someone who just started the other day and she only has 10 pounds to go. But I don't look at it as, well, I'm going to work with her until she loses her 10 pounds and then she's all set. I'm going to work with her to create a lifestyle where she loses that 10 pounds or whatever it means, and she knows how to keep that off and maintain and feel good and be healthy in her body. So if you're saying, yeah, but I have to lose 150 pounds. Yep, we do that. Or, hey, look, I'm down to that last 15. I don't think this is for me. We have lots of people in our community who are at that closer to goal kind of number. And then I'm going to comment on the maintenance thing because a couple of questions were about maintenance. Folks, we could spend 18 hours in here talking to you about maintenance. It is a super important topic. I'm going to give you my Reader's Digest condensed version of what to focus on in maintenance. Doing the things that got you where you wanted to be. If I ate foods that work for my body and I gave my body breaks between when I eat to get to my goal, those are the same things I have to do to maintain my goal. They will look different. The number of hours I go between meals may look different, but those are the skills. And so, unlike every kind of diet plan we've all tried before, it was unsustainable. It wasn't a lifestyle change. This is about changing your relationship with food, your relationship with yourself, and the timing, giving your body breaks for healing. That's got to continue. If I lose 100 pounds and work really hard to get there and then stop and go back to all of my initial behaviors, I guarantee I will regain the 100 and more. But if I keep going with the lifestyle changes I've learned to do, I get to stay where I feel good. All right, so that's kind of a summary of some of the questions that have been coming up that I wanted to highlight. Some people are asking about alternate day fasting, meaning you eat regular meals today, tomorrow you fast. Does that work? Heather, Lisa, does alternate day fasting work?
Great.
Oh, yes.
I lost the majority of my weight. I was morbidly obese. I was quite obese. So when you're that obese as I was, or if your hemoglobin A1C is off the charts, you can do more extended fasts closer together. So I lost the majority of my weight doing 72s, but doing rolling 42s is what, oh my goodness, all my health markers, all my vital signs, my Aura ring was loving it, everything. As a matter of fact, for the very first time in my life, I would wake up and say, is this a fasting day or an eating day? Because I was not hungry. I wasn't preoccupied with food. So that rolling fast is one of the best things you can do if you have leptin resistance. And if you have insulin resistance, you almost always have leptin resistance. And Terri gave me a book on leptin. Thank you very much. And one of the best things you can do to keep that insulin down, consistently down, and therefore get your leptin down, leptin is the satiety hormone, is to do a rolling fast. So, and you can do, Megan lost the majority of her weight on 42s and a 24. So it was showing up for your fasting 3 days a week in some way, shape, or manner.
Exactly. Just as an aside, 342s is what I did. I think sometimes, so I still had children at home when I was doing my therapeutic fast. And so working around the weekends was a little bit trickier. And I know for some of our moms, even doing 342s can be tricky, right? So either doing a 242 and a 24 like Megan did, or 248s is sometimes what our moms do, so that there's like, they're only missing dinner with their kids 2 days. I mean, not missing, but sometimes we sit with our kids and have bone broth while they're eating. And I know, there might be some people in this room that are like, wait a minute, I thought 16/8 was intermittent fasting. What do you mean 42? Yeah, that's what we really mean 42. We really mean we are waking up and going to bed without having eaten. And when I first heard it, I was like, what are you talking about? A person cannot do such a thing. Yeah, it turns out a person can do such a thing. And like Lisa mentioned, they can do it without even feeling hungry. And it sounds crazy. It does. I get it. I felt the same way, but it is one of those things where you gotta take a leap of faith. Yeah, don't knock it till you try it, right? Until you have gone and done the thing where you hydrate and you get the salt and you do all of the things that we teach, and you just skip that first dinner. You wake up the next morning and you're like, I just unlocked the ability to tap into a superpower. And that's what I tell my clients. Please look at it that way, because once you can do an overnight fast, then there is no amount of body fat that you cannot burn up for fuel. And that's it's the miracle we've all been looking for, folks. Like, this is it. It is, what everybody who is trying to use the injectable medication or the surgery or the whatever, that's what they're looking for. How can I lose a significant amount of weight in a reasonable time frame? Fasting, but not just, time restricted eating, not just 16/8. Those overnight fasts really hold the key for most of us who have struggled our whole lives with weight.
I had one client once, she made me think of her, and she had 4 teenagers. And so she would sit down and watch TV with them because she wanted to know what was going on, what they were watching, what they were interested in. And she had been doing fasting for like 6 months, and she could sit down and they would bring out all their, snacks and things for the movie, and she did not want them. And then she contacted me one January and she said, the noise is back. She said, I can't sit with my kids anymore and watch TV with them. I want the snacks they want. What has happened to me? And I said, what did you do over Christmas? Did you dive back into all the sugary stuff that's offered at Christmas time? And she said, yes, I did. And I said, you turned on the insulin beast. Because when you tame that insulin beast or slay that insulin beast, either one, you have a superpower. You can fast now. You're not hungry. Food's not in charge of you. It's not the boss of you anymore. You bring that back on board, and guess who's back on? It's telling you, ooh, Lisa, there's something in the fridge. Go look. Maybe you missed something, cleaning it out.
Absolutely. And this is one of the examples of this whole, it's a much bigger journey that we're talking about. It's changing how we recognize what messages we're getting from our brain, and when we learn different ways to respond to that. I guarantee you, every comment that has been put in the chat, every question that has been asked, you are not like some rare alien because you struggle with these things. These are human responses. Our brain responds certain ways. And so it's really learning that, oh, yes, this is natural that it's happening, and I can do something to keep working on it. I want to address something else that isn't a theme in the questions, and that is, how do I know how long to fast? Is it okay to do some OMAD, meaning one meal a day, 24 hours, before I move up to 42? How long should I do 16/8? Now, these are great questions. The challenge is there's not one answer for each of us, even the three of us here, all of you. There's this point about what is therapeutic, how does your body work, and what does it respond to, and what are your goals? I know Lisa started with 18/6 or 16/8, something like that in the beginning, and lost some weight doing that. My body, not going to lose any weight doing 18/6. It's healthy. It's a great way of eating for me, but my body is not going to release weight on that. And so we have to find, and there's a great podcast episode on this, we have to adjust what I call the fasting dial and find where is it that our body responds in the way we need it to respond, where it can burn more fat, where we get some autophagy. So for some people, 18/6 works. You're going to go in the Facebook group and see someone who lost 100 pounds doing 18/6. You're like, oh my gosh, why is that not me? And then you're going to see someone else who said, I did 2 66s for several months, and then I did 3 42s, because that's what's therapeutic for their body. So I really do, I wish we could just give you all a quick answer that would just work for everybody. But it is very individualized. But going back to the question, is it okay to do one meal before moving up? Absolutely. Not only is it okay, but it's really what's recommended. Build up your fasting muscle. You don't go to the gym and pick up the heaviest weights and do the most intense workout. You start with the lighter weights and you build up. Same with fasting. Start first, no snacking. biggest challenge, as Lisa highlighted. That's one of the biggest challenges for so many of us. I'd rather do a 48-hour fast than not snack. So build up gradually. Okay. Heather, you look like you have something you want to pop in here.
I mean that whole piece, that whole n equals one piece is something that it is on repeat, right? And we are all coaches here, right? So, that is part of the services that we provide at the fasting method, right? So for those with the means, and the determination to really get into this work and really have somebody that to help them with their accountability and support, right? Part of what we do when we meet with a client is we assess where they are, and then we talk to them about what they need to do to get to where they want to go, and that is going to change over time. We start with a plan and we iterate it based on their needs, based on their response to that plan, and we adjust that fasting dial based on what's going on in their life, whether or not vacations or holidays are coming up, and their bandwidth to handle it. So that kind of one-on-one coaching or small group coaching is part of figuring out, okay, what is therapeutic for you? So if you need that level of intensity, coaching is the way to go. And I will say that, we talk about how, this is so miraculous, it's so amazing, but is it easy to stick with? No, it's not, right? It is one of those things that feels really great when you're doing it, and then it's just still so hard to fall off that wagon and go astray, much like exercise, right? How many have had an exercise habit and you're going strong, you're cruising, then all of a sudden, your gym's closed for a week, or you had a snowstorm, or something happened, and then all of a sudden that gorgeous habit is like, where'd it go? What did I do with that? I loved that habit. Why don't I have it anymore? Right. So part of, the reason, that we have the fasting method community, and then we have these live meetings and our forum and all of these resources, is because, like I said earlier, we're trying to live differently than everyone else. That is not an easy thing to maintain consistently, especially as life keeps coming at you. So at the very, like the minimum, yes, there are the free resources out there. But I think that, that the support, the community, the consistency of what we, offer within the community is worth the investment, right? Of course, again, biased, absolutely biased as someone who had a life-changing experience when I signed up for it myself. Of course, I used to tell Terry, I'm going to stand on the street corner with a sandwich board and a bullhorn and talk about, what I've done through the fasting method, what they have given me. Instead of that, I go on social media and podcasts now and do the same thing, which is probably more effective. But yeah, like there is no question that this support is life-changing if you make use of it.
Well, your quote behind you, fall down 7 times to get up 8. That's what I love about fasting. And it has been shown, research has shown that fasting builds your resiliency in your brain. And resiliency is the ability to get back up and do it again. Failure, all those, that thread of success is built upon fibers of failure. You learn from that, and you also learn what to put in your toolbox so that what works for you, and you learn to just dust yourself off and get back at it. I have fallen off the wagon, if you want to call it that, multiple times in the last 8 years. But I know how good I feel when I fast, and I keep going back to that. I know how it heals my body. I could just go on and on about the number of changes in my body that has taken. So that's what keeps me going back to it. And that's what keeps my health markers in place. It's a lifestyle, right, Terri?
Absolutely. It's a transformation. It's changing so much about our lives. Folks, we have so many questions, and I am, I always struggle with these kind of things. Just like on the podcast, we can't possibly answer everything, but you all have such good questions. And what I want to, again, kind of encourage that we're talking about is, I don't know what the current number is. It might be somewhere around 28 meetings that we have, live meetings every week. Monday through Saturday, depending on what part of the world you're in. So we talk about these things with people all day, every day. There are people who come to 12 meetings a week, 20 meetings a week, one meeting a week. We record some of those meetings if you can't make it to the meeting. You're at work or you're traveling or it's middle of the night for you. We record some of those meetings so that you can still listen to them. We have webinars. We have, as one of you mentioned, I don't remember, the forum, which is a written way. So you don't have to worry about what your time zone. You can write in some questions and you can say, hey, I'm working on this. How do I move from a 36 to a 42? And community members will say, oh, here's what I did. So again, you get to learn from us as coaches, but you also get to learn from each other. And I think Deborah commented in the chat there that one of the resources, there's resources everywhere that we share that are not behind a paywall, but one of the most valuable tools most people experience is those meetings. Seeing each other, being seen, being heard, connecting with us really makes a difference. Heather, I know you had a couple of things that you wanted to make sure we shared today, and I don't remember if you've gotten to do those yet.
Well, so, part of, what we want to, encourage people to do, obviously, is to join us, right? And so there are a few things. Everyone who signed up for this webinar, is on our, you send us your email, so you will get an email follow up. You will, and it'll include a few codes, right, if you will. One of them is, don't take our word for it that these meetings and what's going on in there is valuable. Come look, right? There's going to be a code in that email. I think the code is corner, all caps, that you can have, get 2 weeks free inside the community, and you can come take a look, right? Go on the top. Well, I think our website just got switched around today, but somewhere on that screen it's going to say live groups. You will see a grid of live meetings. You just click on it, you come right there so that you can see what we're talking about, right? All the different topics and all the different coaches running these meetings where people can come and get support. So if you are curious as to what's behind the paywall, what being a TFM member feels like, you can have a 2 week experience just to see. That's how much we believe in it. We're not hiding anything, right? Come look. The other thing is we are all coaches. We offer one-on-one coaching and small group coaching. There is currently a discount available, 25% off coaching. That code, all caps, is spring coaching. That will also be in the email. But that does expire at the end of this month. So you would need to very quickly get yourself set up with an intake with one of us, so that you can, meet with us, make sure coaching is a good fit for you, before we take on that relationship. It's almost like a little bit of an interview, but don't be concerned, right? Right. We just got to make sure that it is a good fit and that you are an appropriate candidate for coaching. And I think, and the last thing, we do have this new cohort thing that we started. I want to say, was it December
Yep.
that we started? It is so cool, you guys. It is basically us teaching the fasting method week by week over a 12-week course that is included as part of the membership. So if you join the community, I believe the next cohort starts May 7th. And the way it works is you get a little lesson, what fasting, right? The fasting method, step one would be, and then you also get support group meetings that you can come attend to ask questions and to hear about it. So that is a way to kind of, even the playing ground. So, because sometimes you join a community and it feels like everybody else is in the ins and you're in the outs and you don't know what all the acronyms mean. We start throwing around TRE and OMAD and all of these things. Whereas if you, kind of work through this 12-week course, you can learn, what is it we're talking about, and maybe pick up all of the things you might be missing when it comes to fasting, whether it's regarding the electrolytes, the side effects, how to manage social situations, all of those things that kind of become second nature for those of us who've been around the block for a few years. We try to break that down week by week for people. So that's something, again, starting May 7th, that you can participate in, and it comes as part of the membership. So I encourage anyone who is considering it to come take a look inside and see if this is a right fit for you. It was obviously for all of us life-changing. And so we're here to change lives too, if we can.
Absolutely. And we're going to be doing one of these each month, and we will rotate in different coaches. I know Heather and I were both here last time, so we'll just keep rotating other coaches in. So you get to keep coming back and chatting with us. And, we again will try to answer some questions each time and look forward to getting to see you again soon. This is exciting for us. Obviously, like I've said a couple of times, say we could talk about this nonstop. I used to be on meetings for many hours because I couldn't stop talking about it. I was so excited. So, come to these meetings, even if you can't at this time join the community, keep coming here. Keep connecting with us here, and keep learning. Remember, this is a transformation. It's not something you're going to do in a week. It's not something you're going to do in a month. It's something you're going to begin now and work on for the rest of your life. Okay? All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm going to take just a minute to jot down a few things, but I am going to stop the recording. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for the messages in the chat. Really appreciate all of you, and we're so glad that you were here. Bye,
Make good
everybody.
choices, everybody.
That's right.